Oh, so this isn't live?
This is live now, so we'll have to like chop it out before we post it on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
But I'll go ahead and get started.
You didn't tell us about YouTube, JT.
Exactly.
Famous.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Awesome.
You want to sit up when you have to talk? Or?
Yeah. Oh, I could just, I could sit here. Can you hear me?
Yep,
Yes.
everything sounds perfect. So I'll go ahead and begin. Welcome everyone to this edition of CIC Talks, where we'll be discussing emotional justice. This term was coined by journalist and radio host Esther Arma as a way to understand how trauma impacts people psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually. It challenges us to invite our feelings and bodies and pain into our work as activists, not just intellect logic, but feelings and intuition as well. I'm Jordan J.T. Turner. I'm one of the assistant directors in multicultural student affairs at Northwestern University, and we are one of 3 units that make up campus inclusion and community here on campus. We will later be joined by assistant director of multicultural student affairs, Alejandro Magana. In today's webinar, we'll be discussing and barriers to this space doing activism work and strategies for self-care and wellness that we can use in our work as activists. This is a topic that is often left out of the conversation and impacts so many students here on campus and beyond doing social justice work. We are pleased to have today's panelists joining us from Counseling and Psychological Services, also known as CAPS, here on campus. They are Rosemary Magana, licensed clinical professional counselor, Chinwe Zhang, postdoc fellow, and Romario Hufstead, doctoral intern in psychology, all in CAPS. Please feel free to type questions or strategy or thoughts into the group chat throughout the webinar for panelists, moderators, or for each other. At the end of the webinar, we'll have time to answer some of your questions and discuss some strategies as a community. Thank you again for your time joining us, and I'll now turn it over to our panelists. Thank you. Oh, yep.
Oh, I thought Alejandro went first.
No, you're welcome.
Okay, so my name is Rosie Magana. I'm one of the staff therapists over at CAPS. We're going to be using a little bit about an article posted by Yola Akili to kind of guide us in talking about strategies and identifying kind of the reasons why some activists who might be struggling a little more with kind of this emotional justice and finding a balance. And we're going to be giving you some strategies to address these. One of the reasons that they identify as possible a bigger struggle for activists is that those in activist organizations or in this kind of community are usually at overcapacity, underfunded, and maybe even in lower numbers. So there's a lot of work to do and there's little people to do the work, which can make it a little difficult to take care of ourselves and also create some fatigue, obviously stress and feeling overwhelmed. So it's important for us to have strategies to take care of ourselves. The first thing is to just address and identify that we need help and there's some emotions that we're feeling during this time. Good ways to kind of address that in more of a group dynamic or in the community is maybe to create space for it. That can be retreats that maybe happen over a weekend once a year where people talk about how they're feeling, talk about barriers they feel throughout their work and maybe some of their struggles, identify their feelings and share and also kind of share what helps them. Or also it can be as small as weekly to daily check-ins with people, whether it's a weekly staff meeting where everyone kind of shares a little bit about their emotions and how they've been feeling or their struggles, and also asking what they need from the team during that week and giving that space for everyone, or planning activities of relaxation for people to do. Again, usually in these communities, they are underfunded, so we need to get creative sometimes with this. So maybe creating outings that everyone can attend or tapping into other resources, whether it be on campus or in the community that can provide free resources. Something I usually suggest is if you are in a community, you can also reach out to maybe a school of massage therapy that can come in and give out free massages to everyone, and they do that during lunchtime. Things that can maybe are not as expensive and you can actually do. Second reason that also people may find it even harder to kind of take care of themselves in these communities is that they're usually a struggle to meet a larger systemic problem. And if you continue to focus on the larger systemic problem, it can lead to feeling a little hopeless and helpless sometimes. Some strategies to deal with that would be to create small goals that you can celebrate on a smaller scale more regularly, opposed to feeling like you're going towards trying to meet a bigger goal that just seems unreachable. So setting these small goals can give you little celebrations as a team or within yourself. Also, maybe giving yourself some 2 to 3 positive affirmations a day. So naming 2 to 3 things that you do well, or 2 to 3 things that you accomplished that day, or sharing how you feel about someone else and how good they're doing, and sharing and passing on that positive thought and that positive feel to someone else. These are things that can help, or just making sure that you're giving yourself space to do things that relax you and environments that you enjoy. Taking a walk, going for a run, or spending time with family. If you're working with a grassroots organization, or you're working for a community, but you're always stuck in policy and in meetings, it might be a good idea to spend some time with the people you're trying to help, listening and talking, without an agenda or a specific task you're trying to accomplish, but just to listen and kind of enjoy their company and remind yourself on why you're doing what you do, and kind of what the reasons behind that. I'm now going to pass it on to our next person to talk about a few other strategies.
Yes, so the third kind of issue sometimes come up when doing social justice work is that sometimes, especially when we're having difficult dialogues about privilege and oppressions, sometimes the individuals in the room with privileged identities may experience and express various emotions from the range of feeling guilt, shame, sad, defensive, discomfort, or anger. And sometimes we notice that the conversation may then shift from discussing the issues of depression, of oppressions and privilege, to kind of caretaking and easing the discomfort of those individuals that shared the discomfort. And it may result in kind of avoiding further discussion of the topic at hand, minimizing the impact of oppressions, or escaping accountabilities as a result, because of caretaking, and because of also kind of the discomfort, or even like when someone starts crying, it's really hard to continue to stay with the topic. It's a more complex issue. I think it's really common, and that could be addressed in 5 minutes. But I think one of the strategies that to kind of how to stay focused, be effective, and not get lost with a lot of things going on in the room, is one strategy is with the acronym of STOP. So S-T-O-P. So the idea is S stands for stop, so taking a pause. T stands for taking a deep breath for yourself. So first pause, take a deep breath, and then O stands for observe. Observe internally. With the emotions in the room, what's triggering inside you? What are your responding emotions? Are you feeling annoyance? Are you feeling angry? Are you feeling guilty? Are you feeling judgmental? Kind of like notice what's going on for you. And the importance of that is that it could kind of help you to also, when you notice the emotion, notice your urges, your urge to actions. So when we feel guilty, we tend to kind of try to comfort the other person, or when we feel annoyance, which we become more judgmental, and or angry, we become more attacky, rather than kind of being able to stay with compassion and focus on the issue. So pay attention to your feelings, and then ask yourself, what are my goals here? What's the objective? Am I trying to get my point across and trying to educate and stay with the facts and the phenomena, or am I trying to get closer to this other person in the room to maintain the relationship? And also, what are my values, and how could I feel that I'm staying authentic about my experience, and how can I stay with those discomforts? And P in STOP stand for proceed mindfully, with compassion, and try to stay non-judgmental. And we find that in communication, being in that stance of kindness and compassion usually may be easier for the other person to hear what you have to say. And also the balance between compassion and also setting boundary and asserting and redirecting about, I hear that I see that this is what you're experiencing, but I think it's important for us to continue to talk about this and try to stay with the discomfort. And the fourth point about kind of the emotional justice articles talk about a lot of times activists and people in general, we tend to intellectualize and kind of think a lot in our head. And sometimes we may not be as connected with our emotions. So when someone asks how you're feeling, we tend to kind of respond with a thought. And I think we here want to also emphasize the importance of emotions, because feelings, our own experience of feelings really help us to feel motivated and also help us to organize our behaviors and actions. It could be very effective in communicating and influencing other people, and also it tells us about our needs. So when we stay connected with our feelings, a lot of time we know kind of when we're stressed out or when we're burned out, and could tell us when we need to take care of ourselves. So the stop strategy also applies here. If we could periodically stop, take a deep breath, kind of observe, like physically, bodily, how are we feeling? A lot of times that we have a kind of a corresponding physical reactions to that, and also developing emotional languages about to labels what we're experiencing, and that really, and then proceed mindfully to kind of help us to take care of our needs, based on whatever we are feeling.
So this fifth reason kind of pertains to this lack of awareness as it regards to life experiences, our own psychological frameworks, our own personal narrative. And when reading this section, it really caused me to reflect on a quote by Tony Dungy where he says, life is about the journey. It's about the lives we touch, the legacy we leave, and the world we change for the better. Activism is all about the social change and having a positive impact and having an impact for the better. But I think that first part of his quote is very, very much important. That's life is all about the journey. And it's so important to have a full awareness about our life experiences, tapping into the emotions. What do we value? What do we attribute meaning to? How do we understand, or what kind of efforts do we put in understanding who we are as well as the world around us? And this awareness can be very beneficial because it helps us to be connected to our personal narrative, as the author discusses. It helps us to be in tune in terms of what motivates us, what makes us happy, what makes us hurt, what makes us upset. And all these things can be very beneficial because this awareness also helps us with creating a sense of balance as well as a sense of self-care. But sometimes tapping into the emotion and sometimes tapping into some of the most deepest aspects of who we are can be extremely difficult. And then asking for help can be even more challenging. But taking those steps, although it requires a lot of courage, can be one of the most beneficial decisions an individual can make. Not just from a perspective of increasing awareness, but also understanding how activism, as well as just general life experiences, really have an impact on us. And so something that we really recommend at CAPS is journaling. It's such an effective tool to be able to write down thoughts and emotions, talk about experiences, and just have this opportunity to kind of just express. And so whether you're on the spectrum where it's easy for you to kind of express emotions or it's a little bit more difficult to put that into words, it's such a great and vital tool to be able to use. So whether you're just jotting down ideas or small sentences or even long narratives, it can be a very, very beneficial tool. And so kind of leading to the sixth point, this ideological violence. So, sometimes activism and social change can also include a lot of pain and a lot of hurt that affects communication. Author talks about, belittling one another and this aggression and, just the amount of anger that sometimes that's involved. And sometimes that even gets turned around to individuals fighting for the same cause turning on one another. So this is why awareness on an individual level is so important, so that activism and efforts on a group level can be successful. And so there can be healthy environments for planning, for strategy, as well as dialogue. So although social change is extremely powerful and it's a very great experience, I think to allow it to be even more successful is us tapping into ourselves and having an awareness of, if we need help, are we seeking it? Are we aware of the different experiences that we have that's regarding activism or just general personal experiences and how they're impacting us? And then kind of like what my colleagues mentioned of, are we taking care of ourselves and creating that sense of balance in our lives? Because self-care is so important, and it's okay to, you know, stand for different causes, but we also have to work on our individual self as well. And so being mindful of the resources that are available is also important, and we're a resource on campus that, you know, is here to help out in any way that we can. And so, you know, just really tapping into that, I think, can be very important.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. This is my guy. First, I'd like to thank our panel for the insights that kicking us off with this topic. We want to move into questions that have been submitted by participants. And if you're joining us live, feel free to ask questions, and we will try to get to them during our time. And so to begin, you know, Chinwei mentioned, you know, the STOP strategy. And so with Northwestern being such a fast-paced environment and our students being here for only 4 years, how can as students, you know, make this strategy work in such a fast-paced environment?
That's a question?
Yes.
Yeah, so I find it helpful to create small pauses in our day-to-day routines, and I think some students also find it helpful. The idea of mindfulness is that a lot of time we do live in our head, that we're either thinking about the future, thinking about the past, and we are not at the moment, and we get distracted, and we are less effective and less efficient when we are kind of thinking about all the distraction, and also respond in kind of an automatic way rather than an intentional way. So I think the idea of pausing and then proceed kind of mindfully really is more helpful and effective, and save times at times.
Can I add something to it? I think it's very conducive to the environment of kind of, I have a lot to do and it's a fast pace, right, at Northwestern, because even though the explanation seemed a little, you know, oh, that seems like a lot to do, it's actually a very easy, quick strategy to implement of just saying stop and go through each step of kind of being aware of stop and then listen and you know, identify what those feelings are and observe that and then be able to proceed. So it's actually something that can be done in minutes by just taking that pause.
And different students have different strategies, and some of them will set up a random bell in their different apps on the iPhone or your smartphone that you could kind of like ding at different moments, and then that's the time that you remind yourself to slow down and pause. Or some students will kind of take intentional pauses during their lunch breaks and before they have breakfast and meals and so forth, or when you're walking from classroom to classrooms, or waiting for bus, or being, you know, doing things that you're already doing, but then also kind of use that moment to check in with yourself.
Great, thank you. Kind of the second question that kind of has come in is, what may be some signs to pay attention to that may signal that I or someone that I know may need to seek professional support?
So a lot of times we look at a number of things, like how is it affecting their daily functioning? You know, how is it affecting, like, are you noticing that they're not engaged in activities that they once really enjoyed? We call it anhedonia. Are they feeling kind of distant? Are they isolating themselves? What's their appetite? Has that changed? If you're noticing like significant differences and you know your peer or your family member just does not seem to be acting the same, it might be helpful to have that discussion that, hey, you know, it might be something that you might want to talk to somebody about. Because I think there's this common stigma that you have to be schizophrenic or you have to have some, you know, intense psychological issues to seek our services. And the fact of the matter is, anything that's impairing functioning, anything that's causing stress or causing anxiety, regardless, you know, is something that we can treat and provide support for.
And if you start questioning whether or not to maybe CAPS, we also have the program Let's Talk, which is an informal consultation around campus that can provide, if you have some questions, just check in. And that's on our website of where and what times, or it's available at the library, at the MCC, at the Black House, and at the International Office.
Great, thank you. How can people within our communities or support circles keep us accountable for self-care?
I think leaders have a big part in this, right? So if you're a leader of an organization, or you're an e-board of an organization, it's important for you to speak up. You know, if you're listening that most of the conversations are pretty negative or down, or you hear your peers really talking about, I only slept 2 hours last night, or I only slept 3, or kind of turning this into a competition, realizing, is that really the best for us? Is this the community and the experience we want for us? And opening up that conversation and talking to your group or your peers about your concerns, or reaching out to CAPS to come in and talk to your group or your club, or reaching out to your MSA or your advisor of your group about what your concerns are. But saying something is important.
Here's another one that came in, kind of similar. How do we take care of ourselves and still stay accountable to our communities and our work and our activism work? So it sounds like there's people that they have things that they need to do, schoolwork, lives, and then they also have these kind of external pressures from from external groups or from other students.
I think that could be one of the most difficult challenges. Is being a student is already so stressful as is, and so when you add new things on top of it, it can be extremely overwhelming. I remember I was at Dennis University where I went for undergrad. I had some activism that took place my senior year, and I was a president of the Black Student Union. And something that we expressed is that what we're doing and the causes that we're fighting for are extremely important. But in order for us to give 100% and for those things to be 100% successful, we also have to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves. And so we do things on an individual level where, like for me, basketball has always been a stress reliever. So I made sure that I was, getting myself care in, and then also making sure that the organization and other activists were also doing things where we would go to the movies together, or we would go out to dinner together, or if we were having like a planning meeting, we would actually have it off campus just to kind of relieve stress. So you can create that balance. Sometimes it's very difficult, but sometimes just writing it out, like what are the ways I can best take care of myself, and then as a group working together on what ways can we best work with each other, I think could be very beneficial.
Yeah, I think it's something a lot of people who are helpers who want to help and create change always have to check in with themselves, right? And we're not going to be able to help others if we're not taking care of ourselves.
I just want to add, I think balance is the key, and I think exactly that we do spend a lot of time doing activism work and spending time doing other things, but I think if you look at your calendar and how much time you spend on self-care activity, there's a really clear kind of parameters to kind of figure out how much time you're prioritizing that. I always use the metaphor of the bank, right? You need to put in money in order to take out money. So ask yourself how much time you have put in energy in restoring yourself and your energy, and find balance that way.
Mm-hmm. Can you think of examples of multiple leaders that you can exercise self-care and what that looks like?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, I was thinking if you can think of examples of like notable leaders that exercise good self-care, and what does that look like?
My immediate person that comes up is Dalai Lama. I think he is a leader and he's doing really challenging work, but I also think that he does take care of himself in a sense that he kind of and exactly, I don't know exactly how he take care of himself, but he does seems like he pay attention and being mindful and stay with his spirituality and connecting with other people and find energy that way. And there's someone that that comes up when I think about doing a lot of activism work, but also seem to be living a pretty balanced and healthy life.
President Obama comes to my mind. There was a special on him the other day where he was playing basketball, and he had all his Secret Services guys kind of like patrolling the whole basketball court. But it was something that, as busy as he has the busiest job in the United States, he still takes time out to kind of regroup and kind of regenerate, decompress from all the stresses of his daily life. So basketball, working out, exercise, family is very important. So, he takes time out to go on vacations and things like that. As Shenwei said, you need that opportunity to kind of just get away from things and to create that sense of balance. And if President Obama can do it, then we can all surely incorporate that in our lives.
I thought of President Obama as well, following the White House Facebook page and seeing all those pictures of children coming to visit him, or other just people trying to, and how happy he is, and the joy I see in his face to have that one-on-one with different people. I think that's important. I don't know what he is outside of that, obviously, because I don't know him. So I think this is a really difficult question, because we only know part of some of these notable leaders and what they do, right, is what they show them. So I try to look upon kind of those people in my life and who influenced me in a big way, and kind of given me some of the values I have, supervisors I've had, and supervisors I've had that I've seen, and I'm like, I don't want to work in that manner, because they're here all the time and they don't look happy. So what can I do to be different? And then I also think of my father, who's always taught me, yeah, work hard, but also spends time with family, and told me, you know what, if you work hard and do what you need to do, you can always make time for family, because you will always have a job, and you will always be able to kind of find someone who's going to support you in that way, or find somewhere to put your energy in.
And if you could each offer one piece of advice to students in closing, or a word of encouragement, what would that be?
I would say the main thing is that you're not alone, and that you have support systems on campus to be here for you and support you through any difficulty that you may be experiencing. So here, that you never have to feel alone. You have staff that's very much committed and dedicated towards helping you through all walks of life.
That's a really hard question. One thing, I guess that sometimes it feels like you're falling behind and you don't have time. It feels like everything's moving around you and you need to keep up, so there's no time to take a break, no time to think about how you're feeling, or to do something you have that you've been wanting to do, and that's just a feeling, and it's going to pass, and it's so important to give yourself some space. It's also important to really express to others or someone you trust about when you need more help, or when you're in need for just a hug or someone just to vent to. Just listen to yourself. Listen to your body. Your body, if you're getting sick a lot, you're physically getting the flu very often, something's going on. Listen to yourself and try to give your body and your mental health what it needs.
Maybe one thing I want to add is I do believe the power of connections, and so maybe soliciting support from the people that care about you, that you feel refreshed, and I think that's the theme that also comes up as well. So surround yourself with people that share similar values and do the same work, and also could support you.
Great, thank you. So we've come to the closing of our time this evening. I want to thank our audience for joining us for our second CIC Talks. I'd like to thank our organizers, Jordan Turner, Khalid Ismail, Joanne Kang. I'd also like to thank our panel members, Rosemary Magana, Chin-Wei Zhang, Romero Hofstedt from Northwestern's Counseling and Psychological Services. Please join us for our third CIC Talk webinar hosted by Student Enrichment Services in the spring quarter. More information will be forthcoming about that webinar. This webinar will be available for free use on the Campus Community Inclusion website by visiting www.northwestern.edu/inclusion. Thank you. Have a good evening. Begin exercising good self-care. And until next time.
Alejandro.
Yes.
Can I do a quick plug real quick?
Absolutely.
So to the African American community, I'm doing my dissertation on the perceptions of mental health of the African American community. So I want to give you my email address. If anyone is interested, you have to be an undergraduate student, identify as African American. My email address is Romero, ROMERO .HUFFSTEAD@northwestern.edu. If you're interested in taking the survey, it would be a tremendous help. Feel free to email me. My name is Romero Hofstedt. Email me. Sorry, Ellen.
That's okay. And do you want to plug in Real Talk real quick?
Oh, Let's Talk?
Let's Talk, I'm sorry.
Yes, Let's Talk is a formal consultation that goes on around campus where CAP staff sit and are available for students to walk in, no appointment needed. It's going on right now on Mondays from 2 to 4 at the library in 1 South. and it's going on at International Office on Tuesdays from 12 to 2. It is available in English, Turkish, Mandarin, and Cantonese. Sometimes that changes, but so just check our website to see when that's available. It's all available at the Multicultural Center. That's where I am on Wednesdays usually, from 1 to 3, and there it's available in Spanish and English, and also sometimes in Cantonese and Mandarin as well. And in the Black House on Wednesdays from 12 to 2, and that is actually where Romero is usually.
Awesome. Well, thank you all again one last time for participating, for joining us for CIC Talks. We hope that everyone will join us for our next talk come spring quarter. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.